Okay, let's run.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it.
It's a quest. It's a quest for fun.
Well, The Rock says, why don't we just cut right to the chase?
Okay, now he wants to get together. Well, he wants to talk.
I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
It's showtime, folks!
What are you?
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to And I Quote, the weekly show where we introduce you to content creators of all shapes and sizes that join us from many and all corners of the universe. We find out more about them by taking your questions. I am your host, Ryan of And I Quote channel, and our guest on this episode is someone we've had the pleasure of meeting at several Comic-Cons over the last few years. He is the indie comic creator of Lycan, Solomon's Odyssey, and no, this is not your average, ordinary, everyday underworld movie with I Am a Death Dealer, played by Kate Beckinsale. Please welcome Dennis Robinson to the stage. Dennis, welcome in, my friend. How are you?
Oh, I am just peachy as always. Thank you so much for having me, Ryan.
Oh, we're very happy to have you here. Now, if you have any questions for Dennis Robinson as we go throughout the course of this episode, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. Our producer is going to be keeping an eye on it as you go throughout the course of this program. And if this is your first time here, welcome. Don't forget to like and share this with all of your closest friends. Dennis, when were you introduced to the world of comics?
I would say I was introduced to the world of comics when I was somewhere between like 7 or 8 years old. That was back when you could get comics at like the grocery store. So we would go to the grocery store and I would just wander over to the aisle that had the magazines and the comics, and I would just plop myself in there and just read through those until eventually I realized that my mother had already left the store, and then I'd have to, scamper, after or whatever. But yeah, that's sort of how I got my introduction to comics, I would say, is just sort of picking them up at the grocery store while my mom was shopping.
Old school spinner rack, maybe. Good times. Well, thank you for sharing those, kind sir. What would you say were some of your favorite comic book writers or artists, past or present?
Right now, I would say my favorite writer is Philip Kennedy Johnson. I was introduced to one of his series by a buddy of mine, Travis Jones, and the series is called The Last God. And it's a series where it's not a very long series, so it's easy to get into and sort of get through the whole story. But it's sort of they tell the story from two different time standpoints. So you're in the present, but they're also telling you about the events that are just spoken of in kind of like passing, like in the past. So it's like two different stories going on simultaneously in the same book. The way that he like builds the world is just fascinating, and the monsters are absolutely horrific. It's almost like a flesh-eating disease, but just turns you into a nasty, spidery tentacle monster of sorts. So it's pretty sweet. I highly recommend it. I can't recall the writer's name, but the Die series, that one's kind of like D&D meets Jumanji, but like rated R. That one's a really, really good series too. I've really enjoyed that one. And then I recently met a writer who's a very famous writer. I just don't know a lot of people. I met him at a con last year, and oh no, now I'm going to blank on his name. Really, he was literally the guy who was responsible for this iteration of Black Panther. Oh my gosh, now I'm so sorry that I have to look it up.
These things happen sometimes, especially when you're live in front of a studio virtual audience.
I know. Christopher Priest. Oh my gosh. But he goes by Priest most of the time. I met him at a convention where he was stationed next to me, and he and I talked about writing comics that whole weekend. And then he shared a few comics with me to read, and I really, really enjoyed those too. He's working, I think he's still working on a Superman run right now, and I'm not a big Superman fan. I don't like Superman. I find him to be kind of boring. And when I talked to Priest, he was like, yeah, no, I think he's boring too, but I think you'll dig the way that I write him. And so he sent me one of the books, and I read it, and I was like, you're right. I do like it a lot better, because it was almost like a psychological being stranded in the middle of space story where Superman doesn't have any powers. It's just he's just stuck in space and losing his mind. And I was like, okay, yeah, no, this is a really interesting take on that character and seeing how that sort of all develops and unfolds. So I would say those are probably the writers that I like the best right now.
Well, as someone, and by the way, all creators have different takes on different characters and different runs happen all the time. But as someone who's a hardcore Superman fan, what you said just now, him being my number one favorite character, that kind of hurts. So I'm sorry I have to do this to you, but the truth is simply this.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal. You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
That's fair. You know what? That's fair. I know a lot of people love Superman. I've just never been a big fan of that character.
It's okay.
It's just not my cup of tea.
It's okay. He's not for everybody. It's
That's
okay.
right.
You know, there are hardcore Batman fans, and there are fans who just don't care for the Caped Crusader, and that's okay.
That's exactly right.
So you know what they say, right? To each their own.
That's right.
It's all good. It's all good. But
Yeah.
I just had to play that as a bit of a joke.
No worries.
Because as someone who's about to meet the cast of a Superman-related show called Smallville next weekend with Tom
Oh,
Welling
are
and
ya?
Michael Rosenbaum. Yeah, from Smallville.
Yeah, I used to watch that show. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be rubbing elbows with Tom Welling and Michael Rosenbaum next weekend in our nation's capital, Washington,
Nice.
D.C. for Awesome Con.
Oh, I'll be there as well. So
You're gonna be in the house?
I'll be at Awesome Con.
Well, guess what? I guess I'll bump into you then. I'll
Yeah.
stop by your booth. We'll
Yep,
have a
I got a booth.
We'll have a nice little chat. I'll rub my Superman merch in your face and tell
That's
you how much
fine.
you're missing out on,
That's fine.
and all that other jazz. There's going to be plenty of indie artists who are going to be selling Superman-related pieces there. So make sure you check out Artist Alley and Exhibitor Alley.
Mm-hmm.
For sure, including this man who we're talking with right now, Dennis Robinson.
right.
Check out his booth. He's got some really good stuff that's not Superman related, but it's still very creative stuff.
And so this year I started doing paintings in a happy little style of nerdy landscape. So I'll have those there at the show too. So various things like the Death Star, the cabin from Evil Dead,
Hey,
Halo, Shadow of the Colossus, Ghost of Tsushima, Howl's Moving Castle, Spirited Away, like all kinds of different stuff. So yeah, I'll have those hanging up behind me as well.
there's a few properties you just mentioned that I really do like. So I'll have to stop
There
by
you
and
go.
say hello to you and see how you're
Yeah.
doing. Maybe buy one of those pieces. I don't know.
Maybe.
We'll have to see if it's in the budget because, as we all know, Comic Cons like to take all your money.
Yes, yep. That's why I don't leave the table. It's one of the pros and cons of working by myself is that I can't leave the table, therefore I can't spend all my money.
Yeah. I just
Because it's
hope
very easy. Because
it
there's
is
a ton of stuff.
extremely easy.
There was a con I went to last year. It was Tidewater, and
Oh
a
yeah, I'm familiar
guy in
with
his a guy and his small child comes up, and he looked so confused. And I was like, "Can I help you, man?" And he's like, "I've never been to a convention before, and I don't know what to do." I said, "Here's what you do." I said, "Don't buy anything. Go up and down every single aisle, look at every table, and either make a physical or a mental note of all the things you like. And then once you've checked out everything, then go back and buy whatever it is you want to buy. Because if you go to the first table you see and you're like, oh, I like this and I like this, and you buy something, well, you're going to be out of money like 3 tables in. And then you may find something, in a totally different aisle that you like even better. And well, now you don't have any money for it. So I was like, just pace yourself a bit. He's just like, oh, okay, awesome. Yeah, I was like, yeah, that's the easiest advice I can give. Just if you're a first time gone goer, check out the whole thing before you buy anything. And a lot of times when I'm at cons, you can tell the seasoned people because they'll come by the table and like, just doing my rounds, checking things out. I'm like, yep, I totally get it. So that's how a lot of people do it. So
Wow, very good piece of advice. You know why?
This is the way.
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 This is the way, and that's a great character from a great freaking show.
Yeah.
And apparently, he's gotten so big that he's getting his own spin-off movie. He's getting his own movie.
Oh, he's getting a movie? Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be tentatively. I hope they change the title because it's really cheesy. It's called Star Wars: The Mandalorian and Grogu, and I'm thinking, the Grogu thing doesn't work. Let's just make it either Star Wars: The Mandalorian or change it up and turn it into something else.
Well, maybe it can't be called Star Wars The Mandalorian because they already have Star Wars The Mandalorian like in their streaming service, so that it has to be differentiated somehow. I don't know.
You got to distinguish between the two, so people understand which one's the TV series and which one's the movie spin-off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, I mean, Lucasfilm, if you're watching or listening to this, which you probably are, feel free to change the title because I'm not a big fan of the title right now. I know Jon Favreau is going to be directing it, which by the way,
he is. Okay.
Yeah, he is going to be directing it. So congratulations, Jon Favreau. And the budget has been cut for certain reasons. They explain it more online. You can do more research on this later, but
Okay.
they cut the budget for certain reasons with Jon Favreau, and also I think movies can be made really, really good for small budgets. So with The Mandalorian, I think you can truly do it. If you want to keep the movie grounded and not have too many visual effect shots,
Yeah.
it's going to turn out to be a really solid like Western movie.
Oh yeah, they should definitely do it low budget,
Cut it
no
back.
CG, like
back.
or very little CG,
Mhm.
and just do a small contained story. Don't try and do some big giant like
Infinity War
tie in to the the rest of the universe. It's like no, don't do that. You don't have to do that. Not every story has to be the end of the universe or we need to save the universe. It can just be a nice self-contained story. That's kind of how the first season felt to a larger extent, which is why I think that's everybody's favorite season. And then every season kind of went off the
Expands.
rails a little bit because it kept expanding and trying to tie back into the already existing stuff. It's like, no, don't do that. Just tell us stories outside of what we already know. It's fine. We already know the other stuff. You don't have to keep telling us. Just do self-contained.
That's completely fair, and we appreciate your thoughts on that. We also appreciate the fact that Dennis Robinson is our guest on this episode of And I Quote, which you may be watching or listening to at the current moment. If this is your first time here, welcome. Don't forget to like and share this with everyone you know. If you have any questions for Dennis, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. We would be more than happy to hear from you. With that being said, we were talking about comic books a moment ago. What would you say are some of your favorite comic book-based movies or TV series, past or present?
TV series, I would definitely say the Netflix Daredevil show. Absolutely love that. I did also enjoy The Punisher, and I did also enjoy the first season of Jessica Jones just because I love David Tennant like a lot. The best parts of season 2 were when David Tennant would pop up. But outside of that, as far as I don't think there's any other Marvel TV shows. You know what? I did really enjoy the second season of Loki as well. As far as the movies go, man, that's a tough one. Most of the Batman movies I enjoy. I mean, aside from the 90s ones that get a little bit too ridiculous. But like the Nolan Batmans, The Batman was good. I used to love the Christopher Reeves Superman movies. Those were a lot of fun way back in the day. And then, of course, the Avengers or the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the first couple phases up till Endgame. I've kind of fallen off the wagon after Endgame because it just feels like there's not really a cohesive sort of story. Again, it's getting into that thing like everything has to be the biggest stakes of all time instead of a small, contained story. Which is part of why I still like the Spider-Man movies, like the newer ones, like Homecoming, Far From Home, No Way Home, that sort of thing. The stories now, No Way Home definitely gets a little expandy, but overall, it's still like a pretty self-contained story. They're in one spot, they're dealing with certain stakes, and I really enjoy those movies too. So I would say those are probably my favorite comic book based movies these days, right now, anyways.
Sensing a theme here. Marvel. By the way,
yeah, DC. I mean, Batman. I said I like the Batman movies, but the DC just. I did like the second Suicide Squad movie. I liked that a lot because I do enjoy James Gunn. But
the James Gunn universe, yeah,
and Peacemaker. Loved the Peacemaker TV show. Thought it was fantastic. But yeah, DC is. I feel like DC is just better at animated movies. Like Marvel animated movies are not very good, but the DC animated movies are really, really good typically. So yeah, so I feel like each of those companies sort of have their sort of strengths and weaknesses and whatnot.
Yeah, and a lot of people have said over the years that their DC and Warner Brothers is really good at putting out animated superhero movies, but the live action ones have trouble, whereas Marvel's doing well with live action stuff, and in the animated department, they're having a bit of trouble. However, X-Men is coming back in a big way with X-Men 97, which is a continuation of the original 1992 animated series that I grew up on.
Same.
But yeah, you and I grew up on with Fox Kids back in the 90s when Fox actually had a brain, and Fox knew what the frack they were doing. Before they got sold to Disney, I just want to point that out. They're doing some good things with the Fox properties over at Disney, but at the same time, like Fox Kids was our jam. That's us. That's our deal.
Oh yeah, the Spider-Man TV show as well.
That's how I was introduced to Marvel as a whole, with Spider-Man the animated series, X-Men the animated series. You had Iron Man, you had the Incredible Hulk, even though Iron Man, they're terrible when you look back on them.
Well, I don't even remember watching those two shows. So I was surprised to see
bits of them, and I enjoyed it. But then when you go back and watch it, it's on Disney Plus. #not a sponsor of this show. But when you go back and see all of them, you realize, Ugh, these are bad. Spider-Man and X-Men were the two that stood out. Everything else was left in the dust.
Oh yeah, and then at that time, I mean, there were so many good animated shows at that time.
Tons of them.
You know, Batman the animated series still holds
Another
up. It's still fantastic. Kevin
30 years.
Conroy will always be my Batman.
Mhm.
Like he's just the quintessential Batman to me.
Mhm.
Between live action or animated, that's Batman as far as I go.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
and
every time I read a Batman comic, I'm hearing Kevin Conroy's voice. And the other thing
Oh, yeah.
is the movie that they did off the television series Batman Mask of the Phantasm just turned the big
Fantastic.
3-0 last year. And you can find that video on our Movie Nerds and DC Nerd playlist where you basically watch us watching the movie and we're doing our own version of a commentary.
Okay.
And it's a lot of fun. It's called Movie Watch Along, which is the name of one of our shows on our channel.
Okay.
You can always go back and watch. We've celebrated a lot of movies over the years, but let me just tell you, let me be truthful with you for a minute. Dennis, the amount of movies that are turning a certain age this year,
Yeah.
and I mean, our list, it's like we're never going to get through it, but we're going to do our best to do so because we got so many that we want to do, which include big name properties, smaller name properties, maybe some cult classics are going to be thrown in there.
Yeah.
Starfighter. I mean, just there's tons and tons and tons and tons and tons. Feel free to look up our Movie Nerds playlist. It's on our channel. By the way, I want to acknowledge our friends here in the chat. Aubrey is here. She says, yes, Daredevil and Jessica Jones. Apparently she's a fan. Nice to meet you, Dennis.
Nice to meet you too, Aubrey.
Yeah. And then she also goes on to say, yeah, James Gunn is good stuff. So, that's, hey, that's that. He's not my cup of tea, but he is a lot of people's cup of tea. So that's
I'll
fine.
be curious to see what he does with the DC. I hate when they have like one person run like an entire franchise. It's like maybe not just have one person do it. Like, why can't you have like a group of people that like collaborate and share ideas? I get like the whole one person's vision thing, but then the issue you run into is if that one vision stinks, well, you've just spent a lot of money to waste a bunch of time. So I don't know. We'll see.
We shall see. I mean, a lot of images have been coming out. A lot of reports have been handed out to the media about the Superman movie. It was tentatively titled Superman Legacy. Now it's just been simply retitled Superman, being taken on by James Gunn. They released the image of what the suit is going to look like on my homeboy Superloop. And we've seen some images of the cast. Nicholas Hoult, who's going to be playing the new generation's Lex Luthor, has shaved his head completely to go bald. So he's paying homage to the characters. And by the way, Nicholas Hoult is a great actor. I've known him since X-Men First Class days. So he's very familiar with comic book movies.
Sure. I'll be curious to see how he does in that.
Me too, because he's a good actor. But is he Lex Luthor? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, like I don't know, like I had said, I grew up on the Christopher Reeves, so like Gene Hackman. What's
his name?
Hackman. I'm thinking of the South Park episode where he goes, Gene Hackman. Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor is that or Michael Rosenbaum. Both of those are sort of like my go-to Lex Luthors. So
a lot of people put Michael Rosenbaum as the number 1 and Gene Hackman's the number 2. So
okay.
A lot of people have said that over the years. A lot of people have said it, and you can look it up. It's on the interwebs, and if it's on the internet, it's got to be true. Most of the time, it's not. But for fan speculation, they have said over the many years, Michael Rosenbaum has been the best portrayal of Lex Luthor within the live-action genre, not counting the animated series with, what was the gentleman's name? On Superman the Animated Series, Clive something. I forget his name, but he was Lex Luthor in Superman the Animated Series. He was great. I love the guy.
Michael Rosenbaum was the Flash.
Which I'm going to have him sign an 8x10 of the Justice League characters.
Okay.
Oh, believe me, man, I came prepared. Like, I'm going to have him sign my Smallville poster, and I'm going to have him sign my 8x10 of all 7 the original Justice League members, including the Flash.
Have you ever been to Awesome Con before, by the way?
Yes, I've been there several times.
How is that show? I've never been to it before.
This is your first time?
Yep, this will be my first time.
Oh, boy. All right, so Smithers, let me tell you about the plan to accelerate at Awesome Con. So Awesome Con is one of the biggest conventions on the East Coast, if not one of the biggest shows in America.
Okay.
And it's the exhibit hall, or should I say the main exhibit hall, where all the artists, the vendors, and the celebrities are going to be, which is on the ground floor. That thing is the size of like 2 football fields. It is insanely big. It's insanely long. There are pillars for you to lean on if you need to, take a seat. There are tables and chairs in the back somewhere.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what, it's a great show. I've met some of my very good friends there. A lot of my vendors who are going to be tabling at that event are going to be there once again because they tend to do it every year. I would say it's a great show. It's very well run, very well organized. Things are labeled. You know where everything is. If you have a problem or an issue that comes up, there are staff members to help you through it. The celebrities that I've come across have been great. I haven't really had any bad experiences. And of course, I've waited 18 years to meet Tom Welling and Michael Rosenbaum. So when my dreams come true next weekend, my mind is going to be blown. And I'm dressing up in the red jacket, the blue shirt, and a pair of jeans and a pair of boots.
There you go.
Which is exactly what Tom Welling wore every single day on the show.
I was going to say, yeah, he always had the exact same outfit. Like
the costume department had a field day, giving him like 50 jackets, 50 blue shirts, 25 pairs of jeans, and like probably 6 pairs of boots.
Yeah, that's a podcast. So like Michael Rosenbaum also has a podcast that I've really enjoyed listening to. And I know he and Tom Welling also have a podcast specifically about Smallville. Yeah, Talkville, but I haven't gotten to listen to that yet. But
so good, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. They go
I've
back
heard clips and it sounds good.
Yeah, they go back and watch all 218 episodes of Smallville because they never got a chance to see it when they were working on the show.
Oh, so, I listen to the Always Sunny podcast, and they do the same thing where they'll sit down and rewatch an episode, and then they'll sit around and chat about it. Yep. Those types of shows I always find interesting just because most of the time, A, they're fun, and B, you get all kinds of cool behind the scenes stuff and seeing their reaction because sometimes they've never watched it before. And like they'll say, I hated that episode, but everyone seems to love that episode, or we loved that episode and everyone hates that episode. So I don't know. It's always interesting to me.
Yeah, definitely check out Talkville, which is on all your podcasting platforms. And obviously, Michael Rosenbaum's primary podcast, which is Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum, is a great show. Yeah. And I also like the fact that Michael Rosenbaum is a big advocate for mental health and eliminating the stigma of mental health, which is great. I think that needs to be more discussed in an open forum. I think that should be embraced and not shunned or disrespected in any way because we also by the way, anyone who says they don't struggle, you're lying because we all struggle with mental health. We all struggle
everybody struggles,
with challenges and difficulties, and Rosenbaum embraces that. So, and when I see Michael Rosenbaum next weekend at Awesome Con, I'll tell him this for sure. Outside of my, I really liked you on Smallville, and here's why story. But I will say to him, Michael, like I really appreciate what you're doing with Inside of You and interviewing all these actors and actresses and creators who have really gone through some stuff.
Oh yeah.
Over the years, but they don't really share it. But when you bring them onto your show, they're more open to sharing that kind of stuff. So if you haven't listened to his show, check it out on your favorite podcasting platform. You can find it on Apple Podcasts. I believe it's on Google Podcasts.
I'm sure it's probably on everything.
It's on, what is it, on Spotify? Like just go to
I would be shocked if it wasn't.
go to, what's the one that's really popular? Go to Spotify and just listen to it. Just go to Spotify. Spotify, whatever. By the way, Aubrey says, OMG, going to be a good Lex Luthor as Nicholas Hoult. Well, we'll see. We'll see. We don't know yet. I'm not going to say anything about this until I've had a chance to see. One, I need to see a trailer because that's going to set the tone. And two, if I actually feel like seeing the movie and I'll go and see it, then I'll give you my honest opinion. But right now I can't say anything. By the way, Dennis, you seem to be cloning yourself because you're saying hello to Aubrey. And then Aubrey says, wait, so much Batman movies. Which is your favorite? And then you went on to say Batman Returns. Wow, Batman Returns. That's more of a Tim Burton movie than a Batman movie, in my opinion. But
it's definitely like what's funny is like watching. What was it? Batman v Superman. One of my issues was Batman, like just straight up murking so many people. But if you go back and watch if you go back and watch it, he killed lots of people in those too. And I'm like, okay, for whatever reason, little Dennis, who didn't know any better, was totally fine with it. But like adult Dennis, I guess now that I know more about the characters, like that doesn't really jive so much. But for whatever, I mean, again, that movie came out like 90.
Well, 92 was Batman Returns, and then the original movie was 1989, which, by the way, that movie turns the big 3-5, and we will be celebrating that on this very channel on Movie Watch Along.
So when Batman Returns came out, I was 6 years old. So
I was 5. You and I are like a year apart, man.
Yeah, so it's like, all right, well, back then my standards weren't quite, as stringent as these days. But I would say I don't know, I just always liked Michael Keaton as Batman. He's probably my second favorite Batman.
He's great.
And while I get that, it's definitely very Tim Burton-esque. I don't know. I dug the way that the world looked.
Oh yeah, I dug especially.
Yeah, and just
love that movie.
Yeah, I just love those two movies. And then it went off the rails with the Joel Schumacher and all that crap. But what are you gonna do?
Batman and Robin, we don't talk about, but Batman Forever, I'm okay with, and actually had the pleasure of meeting that version's Batman, Val Kilmer, twice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's a nice guy, by the way, even though he has the throat cancer and he can't really speak. By the way,
Yeah.
Val Kilmer, our heart goes out to you because with all that. But he actually whispered under his breath when I met him the first time. I had him sign my Batman Forever DVD set at that point. And
Mhm.
this was at the Great Philadelphia Comic Con in Oaks, Pennsylvania, I believe.
Oh, okay.
It used to be a show, and now it's no longer a show. But
Yeah.
Val Kilmer says, "Thank you very much. I appreciate that." So he
Oh, nice.
appreciated the fact that I said, "Hey, I liked your iteration of Batman. I did. Like, I
Yeah.
like your iteration, but the other dude, Clooney, whatever his name is, get that out of here. We don't
Yeah.
talk about that."
Now,
But
Batman Forever wasn't like, there were aspects
not.
I
There were
liked
things that
about it,
worked. Yeah.
but there were other things I'm like,
Cheesy. Yeah.
yeah, I'm just
Cheesy, hokey.
yeah. Like, it's
Uh,
better. Batman works better if you take it more seriously. It's
Mhm.
not a character that is like a light, colorful, have fun movie. It's just
No.
not. It's just not that premise. Basically, it just doesn't work that well.
Well, I know it was mentioned in the animated series of where his Batmobile and his other toys got built, but when
Yeah.
Joker says, "Where does he get those wonderful toys?" Well, we had to wait till 2005's Batman Begins to find out where he got all those wonderful toys,
Yep.
which in this case comes from Lucius Fox of Wayne
Yes.
Enterprises. So there, and it was played by Shawshank Redemption's own I am Morgan Freeman.
It's my favorite movie of all time, by the way.
Is Shawshank Redemption your favorite?
Yeah. Favorite
Guess
movie?
what? That movie turns 30 this year.
Oh my god.
I know. We're going to be celebrating it here on Movie Watch Along on this.
Okay. I don't know if I've frozen or if you've frozen. Aubrey, if you can hear me, tell me what's going on, just in case it's me.
Very channel.
Hello again.
Geez, sorry about that. Technical problems aside, I
No worries.
apologize for that. Things happen. My
Literally
ours-
this week, Comcast decided to upgrade the internet, so it would cut out for like 2 days at a time. So I did a few interviews on Thursday without internet, so I was using a hotspot up in my bedroom because I didn't get service in the basement. So I totally get it.
yeah, sorry about that, folks. But yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen during the rest of the course of the show. But this is a quote with Dennis Robinson, indie comic creator. Don't forget to like and share this with everyone you know. If you have any questions for Dennis or comments, which Aubrey's giving you a lot of right now,
Yeah.
let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. We're more than happy to hear from you. And by the way, Aubrey says, "OMG, Ryan, can I be on that movie watch along, please, for Batman '89?" Well, Aubrey, when we get to that, which is later in the year, we will be in touch. So stay tuned. That's all I can say. I can't promise you anything, but stay tuned. And that goes for you too, Dennis.
Sounds good.
Shawshank is a must see, most definitely. Yeah, it's a great film. It turns 30 later this year. We will be celebrating that. So stay tuned. Check out our social media. Links are in the description to where you can find out more information about that. With that being said, but to answer your question, to round this up, as far as AwesomeCon goes, you're going to have an awesome time.
Awesome.
So
Looking
just
forward to
enjoy
it.
yourself. Have many sales. Sell as much as you can. Maybe I'll buy one of your art pieces if I have any coin left over. And we'll see what happens. But I can't make any promises, so we'll see.
No worries. No worries.
She will.
Even if you just swing by, say hi, that's good enough for me.
Which is fair. Which is completely fair. So when did you decide to become an indie comic creator?
So I had the idea for the books more than a decade ago. I was just out of college, and there's somewhere in this house, there's some rolled up yellow pieces of paper with notes scrawled all over them from way back then. And I shelved it. I said, I'm never going to make a comic book. That's not realistic. And then we started doing our podcast, Botched, a D&D podcast back in 2016, got signed on to a podcasting network later that year. And then we got invited to Dragon Con in 2017. And at Dragon Con, I'm hanging out with all these fellow nerds, and we're sitting there chit-chatting, and they started talking comics. And I pitched the idea for this book idea that I came up with all those years ago. And they're like, "Dude, yeah, you need to make that." And so that's how it sort of got started. I wrote these sort of mutant versions of scripts that are somewhere between a book and a comic book script. And at that time, it was just writing it down and giving it to my friends to read to sort of get story beats, story points. And then from there, found an editor who mentored me in how to actually write a script and what was important and formulating things. And then over the course of, I think, about 5 years, that's how long it took before the first book came out, because, we had to assemble the team, and then we had to, do concept art and figuring all that stuff out, and COVID happened. So in 2021, that's when we launched our first Kickstarter for the book in the series, and now it's about a book a year, or now it's getting closer to about a book every year and a half, because of the length of the books keeps extending. But that's sort of how I got into comics in the first place, I would say.
Rock on, man. Rock on. What would you say are some of the rewards about being an indie comic creator?
Well, so the main reason I've heard, so I moderate panels at Dragon Con on indie comics, and which is fun for me, because then I get to talk to the other indie creators and ask them questions from a curiosity standpoint. And the one thing that I hear the most, and I echo it, though I don't have the same experience they do, because they worked for, the Marvel and the DC, and then they switched to indie. Whereas I've only ever been indie, is that you have complete autonomy and freedom. So you don't have somebody saying, you have a deadline. Like Christopher Priest told me the story of, he would get an email from whoever at DC and say, hey, you need to come up with this brand new idea that nobody's ever had of, and you have 3 days to do it. So you're supposed to be creative on a deadline. It doesn't really work too well. But when you're indie, you have complete control and freedom to do whatever it is you want to do, and develop it at your own pace, and, release it however you want to release it. And these days, because there's so many indie books and there's so many different ways for people to get their stuff out there, you don't have to be aligned to Marvel or DC anymore. You can do like a Kickstarter, or, a smaller publisher if you want to go that route too. So I would say the biggest thing is just the ability to have complete control over your projects, do them at the pace that you want to do them, and not have any sort of interference from anybody else. Because, you've seen it with like Marvel stuff, especially movies. The studio will just change things because, the market says this or that as far as they're concerned. And it usually ends up making things worse. So with indie, you don't really have to worry about that.
Yeah, in some cases, studio executives will spend $400 million on a film that could be easily made for $50 million and still make a good amount of money at the box office. Stop spending so much money on things, and stop spending so much money on visual effects, for Pete's sake. Make more practical movies with practical effects. Wake up and smell some coffee, ladies and gentlemen, in Hollywood, please. You're wasting so much money and so much time and so many valuable resources. It's just, get a grip on yourself. Anyway,
that's like the trailer for I love the Borderlands games, and I watched the trailer for the new movie, and I was just like,
I heard it looked terrible.
It's terrible.
I heard it looked like garbage.
The cast makes no sense. It's all huge names, so they're probably going to have to shell out a dumb amount of money. And I'm like, why? You didn't have to do that. You could have found like smaller name individuals, or maybe just 1 or 2 big names that actually fit the characters from the stories. But no, and the writer for it is like a notoriously bad writer. Like the stuff he makes is terrible. So why would you keep hiring this guy who makes flops? Like, let somebody new who actually cares about the property. How about you let them do it? So I don't understand that with like big name studios. It makes no sense to me, but whatever.
That's unfortunate. But on the flip side of the coin, though, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges about being an indie comic creator?
Well, so that's sort of the other side of the coin. So the one side is, you get all the freedom to do what you want because you don't have to deal with the studio. The bad side of that is you have to do everything yourself because you don't have the studio. You don't have the sort of same distribution, and you have to work much, much harder as an indie creator as you do if you are working for one of the big named companies. Now, the distribution of funds is different, but again, you're not hitting the same sort of reach as you would with one of the bigger named companies. Like, for instance, Diamond is the big distributing company for comics, and it's not the easiest to get into that as an indie creator. You can, but it's not the easiest. And then if you do, it's still no guarantee that your book's going to get picked up at different stores. And if you work for a big name company, you automatically it's pretty much a guaranteed, like, oh no, you're getting distributed and it's going to go, across the country or across the world or whatever it is. And so I would say that's the biggest drawback, is you sort of have to put in way more time and effort to get to the same place as you would if you were working with one of the bigger companies, I would say. Again, you have complete freedom, you have complete control, but that's sort of the catch-22 of it is, well, now you don't have some big name helping you out with getting the word out there and getting it in people's hands. So yeah, like for instance, with me, just the Kickstarter that what I'm doing right now, I've put in hundreds and hundreds of hours to just make the Kickstarter happen. That's not even the book. That's just the Kickstarter. But again, that's not anything that, I'm getting paid for. I'm running that whole thing myself. So I'm just doing it in the spare time that I have. So with indie comics, you just kind of have to have the time, and the will to sort of muscle through it. And in some cases, especially if you're like me, I'm the writer, so I'm the cheapest guy on the team. I have to pay a whole team. They can't wait around on a Kickstarter to come out and hope and cross their fingers that it's going to be profitable. They need to be paid up front. So I'm paying for everything out of my own pocket. And that gets very, very expensive very, very quickly because comics are very expensive to make. A lot of people don't really realize how much money it costs to actually produce a comic, but it is a lot of, of money, I've found out. So yeah, I would say those are probably the biggest challenges to being an indie creator.
So it's kind of like the catch-22. You got to spend money if you want to make money. Yeah, but you got to make it to spend it, brother.
Yep. There's a famous saying that goes around the comics, which is if you want to be a millionaire in comics, the way to do it is to start out with more millions. You'll just lose money to get back down to just being a simple millionaire. So it's one of those things.
That's a lot of coin, brother.
Yes.
What pieces of advice would you offer to aspiring creators out there?
Networking. The one thing and that's not even just aspiring creators. That's everybody in general. Networking. And what I mean by that is, so if you go to conventions or if you're on social media or whatever, it's just having interactions with people, like normal interactions. If you're networking with somebody with the intent of using them for something, they will smell that from a mile away and it won't get you anywhere or do anything. The better route to go is networking to just make relationships. So just making friends with them, just having, talking to people. And then if they have something going on, you try and help them however you can. And then usually they'll just volunteer to help you later on. Networking has been incredibly valuable to me. Like none of the books would have happened without networking. And so for instance, when we went to our first Dragon Con as Botched, what I did was I went to the Artist Alley, which is an entire floor of a building. That their vendor hall is insane. But Artist Alley is its own floor. So I went around to different artists and saw who would be interested in making some of the weird bat crap crazy stuff that we have in our podcast. And I would pitch, some of the stuff to them and they would either say yay or nay. And so I met a bunch of artists that way. And then later on, when I was trying to find my own artist, one of the artists that we worked with, her husband used to work for Marvel and DC, and he put me in touch with a Facebook group that is specifically for pairing writers and artists. And that's how I found my team. I put an ad up on there and people started submitting their portfolios and I whittled down the list. And now I've had the same art team through each of the 3 books. So I couldn't have done that without networking. And the same as far as the writing goes. Our first Dragon Con, when we did our live show, one of the people in the audience, her name is Shannon. She's been the biggest proponent of my books, and they wouldn't have happened without her. Because when I made the first renditions of the script, she had put me in touch with another creator named Henri Kumpen, who then put me in touch with his first editor. And I gave him what I had and he shot him down. And he said, there's nothing redeemable about these books, not the characters, not the story, nothing. And so I was very dejected. And Shannon then pitched Henri the book. And Henri reached out and said, send me the books. I want to take a look at them. And he goes, well, it's not that there's nothing here. You just don't know what you're doing. And so then Henri became my mentor and taught me how to write a script and like the different fundamentals and what to focus on and what to do and not do. And so without the networking, none of that would have happened. Same thing with my day job. I wouldn't have gotten my day job without networking, just meeting people and just having normal conversations. And then later on down the road, they thought of me for a thing, boop, and now I'm in the job that I'm in. And then within the job itself, they're always harping on, you need to do networking. And so now I am known around the office as like the podcast and audio guy. If you need, narration or voiceover done, they reach out to me and I get it done, lickety split. So it's one of those things where networking is.
Jeez, people. I'm telling you, this technology apparently does not like me for the moment. I don't know why. Once again, we
No worries.
apologize to our listeners. We apologize to our viewers. Once again, this is And I Quote with the guest of honor, Dennis Robinson.
No worries.
Here on this episode of And I Quote, don't forget to like and share this with everyone you know. If you have any questions for Dennis, and no, he's not Dennis the Menace. He's just a simple man trying to make his way in the universe.
It's true.
Let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. We're more than happy to hear from you. By the way, when you were a kid, did you ever get the whole Dennis the Menace thing thrown at you?
As a kid?
Yeah, when you were a kid, did anyone say, "Oh, look,
No.
it's Dennis the Menace"?
You think it was limited to just childhood?
Oh, no.
Like
Have they been calling
even
you that
as
for
a
the last 37 years?
yeah, just rent. Like usually it's people that don't know me. It's just like, oh yeah, Dennis the Menace. Ha, 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 ha. I'm like, nope, never heard that. That's original.
I'm sorry, man.
It's fine. I don't care. But
I
used
mean
to
it
watch
in a
that
negative
cartoon
sense.
way back in the day.
Yeah, I don't mean it in a negative sense. I was just trying to be silly.
No. I don't mind it. It's just one of those things that like, yeah, no, I've heard it. I mean, it's kind of hard not to. At this, I mean, Dennis the Menace is one of those cultural. I don't know if anybody these days, younger people would have any idea what Dennis the Menace is. But our age and older, everybody knows what Dennis the Menace is. So
I mean, if you grew up in the 90s, there was a live action retelling of that story, Dennis the Menace. I can't remember the kid's name who played him in the movie, but
isn't it Walter Matthau?
was
Yeah,
Mr. Wilson was Mr.
and
Wilson.
Christopher Lloyd was the villain in that first movie.
That's right. Christopher Lloyd was the main villain. That's right. Speaking of, which, what movies has that guy not been in? Christopher Lloyd's been in like every movie. He's been in every property.
A lot. He still is. He was in Nobody a couple years ago.
That's right. He's still rolling, man.
Yep.
It's crazy. Doc Brown is still chasing his, taking his time, journeying through the space-time continuum. Which, by the way, Dennis, once again, this is going to come up later on here on this year on this very channel, known as And I Quote channel. But for movie watch along, Back to the Future Part 2 turns 35. So
okay.
Yeah,
I have a buddy who still hasn't watched any of the Back to the Future movies.
Well, then they got to rectify that.
Well, I keep telling him that, and he won't do it. So
come on, man. It's one of the best trilogies ever made. Come on.
I will say, going back and rewatching the first Back to the Future as an adult, you really don't realize how much product placement is in that movie until you watch it as an adult, and you're like, oh my God. They were just beating you over everything. Like there was so much, like every single scene is loaded with it. I was like, holy crap.
It was 80s stuff, man. They had Tab, Pepsi Free. They had boom boxes. They had Walkmans. They had Texaco stations. They had Stettler 4x4 Jeep 4x4 trucks.
Yeah.
Remember that? You had DeLorean was getting a huge push at the time because of that movie.
There's another vendor who he's a writer, and he literally brings his DeLorean to shows, and he has it all decked out.
I think I know who you're talking about. Is it Brian Payon?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. He's going to be at GalaxyCon Richmond the following week after Awesome.
Me too. I will be there as well.
You'll be there to see him as well. So, and by the way, Brian Payon has been a guest on this show known as And I Quote. You can go back and watch that episode. And yes, he does talk a little bit about his DeLorean time machine, which, by the way, I wish I had one of those too.
Yeah.
Honestly, that car is ridiculous, man.
I don't know if I'd want it to be my everyday driving car just based on all the horror stories that existed of
that's his car right
issues. There. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, he talked to me about, the different celebrities like taking seats in it and like, just having a table set up right next to it. He's like, it's like flies to honey. And I was just like, you know what? That's a pretty great way to get people at your table. It's to be like,
salesmanship.
Hey, just go sit. You can sit in the DeLorean. You just got to check out my books. I'm like, you know what? It's genius. It's genius.
Ingenious. This man, Guapo, is not just famous. He's infamous. Well, Brian Payon is ingenious. So
how do you know if you have a plethora?
Exactly. See, you're catching up on our references here, man. We appreciate you. So it's all good, man. It's all good. So you've had mentors. You've gotten networking is the biggest thing we came out with as far as advice you would offer to aspiring or any other types of creators out there. So Well put. Now, I do want to mention something here because you're wearing the jersey, so we got to bring this up. Now, unfortunately, we couldn't get our friend Kate Beckinsale to do a voiceover and a quick promo to say, "I am a death dealer, sworn to destroy all things that are a threat to vampires," because there's a war going on between vampires and Lycans. But Lycan, Dennis, what exactly is Lycan? How did this story come about?
So Lycan, the elevator pitch for it anyways, is the story of the world's first werewolf. It's a little horror, a little mythology, a little adventure, a little history. Each book in the series deals with different, regional mythologies and monsters and folklore. It's the same character through each of the books. He just moves around a little bit. So the first book is the origin story. It sets up the world and everything that's in it, the main antagonist, the main protagonist. And then the second book in the series goes into like ancient Arabic monsters, mythology, folklore. And then the third book that's coming, it's on Kickstarter right now, just launched this morning. That one I describe as H.P. Lovecraft meets Gilgamesh. So it's like an alternate telling of the tale of Gilgamesh from the standpoint of what if the story of Gilgamesh is the story that Gilgamesh wanted you to know, but not what actually happened, and goes into like cosmic horror and gods and stuff like that. So again, opening up the world, but keeping the story self-contained. Because that's just what I like to do. And then how this all came about, well, I mean, I guess you could say it came about when I was a little kid. I was in elementary school, put us in the library to just have us kill time, and I discovered a picture book of Lon Chaney's The Wolf Man. And I'd never seen a werewolf before, so I started flipping through it, and I was just fascinated. And ever since then, I've always loved characters that have sort of like a duality or multiple personalities or things like that. So like the Incredible Hulk or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where it's almost multiple characters in the same body. I've always been sort of drawn towards that sort of stuff. And so when I had this, I like to create stories and write stories. So like the podcast that we do, it's basically a long form interactive story with the other players that are on the show. And so this was another outlet for me to be able to tell stories. And the reason I went with a comic book instead of a regular book is, at least for me, when I read regular books, I visualize it a specific way, whether or not that's the same way that the author, visualizes it. Whereas with a comic book, I wanted people to see it the way that I see it in my head when I'm thinking about it. So with a comic book, you're sort of forcing a person to be like, no, this is what it looks like, and this is how it goes. So that's why I went with the comic book. And also, I'm an art person. I've always been drawn to like gorgeous art, and not to be completely, biased or anything, but I think the art that's in our books is gorgeous. I love the art that Sal, our main artist, creates, and then the colorist Ezekiel Dominguez. He just cranks it up to 11 at that point. And then even, the lettering, Joel Saavedra, the way that he does the lettering is really great and causes the reader's eye to sort of go on a little journey through the page. Because he showed me how he does it, and I didn't even realize that's how it worked. But yeah, so he builds the captions in such a way that he leads the reader around the page the way that he wants them to go. And I was like, okay, well, that's actually a really interesting, sort of dynamic that I had no idea letterers, did that. I thought they just plop the captions in the box and that's that. But no, there's a little bit more to it.
Very interesting stuff. I mean, way different than the Underworld series with Kate Beckinsale. So
yes, yeah, very, very different.
I will definitely give you that. But just out of curiosity, though, what did you think of the look of the Lycans in those movies?
So I didn't like the Lycans themselves, but the werewolf in our book anyways, when we were first designing it, I was sort of cherry picking stuff from different, images or movies and things like that. Yeah. And William from the second Underworld movie, there's a fair amount of his look that's in Lycan. It's basically mostly him and the Van Helsing werewolf sort of mixed together. There's a couple other little things here and there, but those are the two main influences that I drew from when we created the werewolf in the Lycan series.
Oh, nice. Are you referring to the Van Helsing iteration with Hugh Jackman?
Yeah, that is, yep. It's not a great movie, but I did like the way the werewolves looked.
I mean, if you turn your brain off, you can enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those like just dumb action movies, and I was hoping for something a little better at the time, because I remember, I mean, back then the internet wasn't that big, And so you'd be watching Entertainment Tonight to get all the snippets and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it, like, I was just so excited for it because it looked so cool. And then I watched it, I was like, yeah, it's not exactly what I was hoping for or expecting, but it's what the music's really good. I love the music in that movie.
And
And some of the characters are good. Kate Beckinsale's also in that movie.
Hey, she shows up. She's the
Yeah.
co-lead in that movie alongside Wolverine himself, Hugh Jackman.
Yep. Now I love Hugh Jackman, so
Yeah,
it's fine. He's fine in that movie.
Yeah.
But the CG does not really hold up these days if you go back and look at it. But
I mean, I liked his look for Hugh Jackman, but at the same time, when you look at it now, you can easily tell he's wearing a wig with that long curly hair. He's got. I'm thinking, oh man, why didn't you just go with your natural hair? Why didn't you just grow it out naturally to make yourself look like the character? I don't know. That's just a nitpicky thing for me. But Kate Beckinsale, I mean, you could put her in any movie and she's still going to look one of the most beautiful women on the planet.
Yeah. My guess would be for Hugh Jackman, because that had to still be around the time when.
Yeah, they were filming both that and the conclusion of X2 while they were filming Van Helsing.
So he needed short hair for that. And so, like, there's not enough time for him to grow out that entire, like, length of curly hair would be my guess. So, yeah, it's sort of like Henry Cavill when they, he had a mustache for the one movie. So they had to, CG it off because that's what happens when you're, doing multiple movies at the same time. They kind of have to have some sort of overlap, but
CGI mustache or CGI no mustache in Joss Whedon's Justice League, as people call it.
I want to see the mustache cut. I want to see Superman with the mustache.
Maybe there's some footage out there that we're not aware of. I'm not sure. You may have to look it up on the interwebs. I have no idea. I wouldn't recommend it or condone it. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Henry Cavill, you're still the man. Still wish you would have gotten your own 3 set of Superman movies to get your own trilogy. Never happened. A lot of actors got the short end of the straw, but he certainly got the shortest end of the straw. But Henry, you landed on your feet. You got a million other projects in the wings for you. You're still relatively young, according to Hollywood. So you got a long way to go, brother.
So so for whatever reason, I don't know why, but I watched. I used to watch like HBO and Cinemax, whatever, when I was a kid, because that was all it was on. And for one of the movies that I really enjoyed was The Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh yeah.
And Henry Cavill's in that movie.
A very young, up and coming at that point.
And I didn't realize that because I just randomly watched a clip on YouTube the other day, and I was like, wait, what the crap? Henry Cavill was the kid back then? I was like, all right, did not know.
He's had a very, very interesting career.
Yeah.
He goes to being in that. He was in the Tudors for the longest time, which is where he got his really big start. And then after that, he got cast as Superman. Some other things came his way. You got The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which he did with Armie Hammer, which was a really funny movie. That movie was basically his pseudo audition to play James Bond. And by the way, if they're looking for a new James Bond, you might as well just cast Henry Cavill, because the guy was tailor-made to play that character. So,
I mean, you know what? I'm actually okay if they just let him make Warhammer movies, because I think that would be pretty cool. Just because the Warhammer universe is so deep.
It is
like
deep.
There's so much lore. It's ridiculous. Like, I don't play Warhammer. I've watched videos on the lore, and the lore is just insanity.
Is it?
And apparently he's like a huge Warhammer nerd, and he's supposedly running the show as far as, all the Warhammer stuff goes. So I think if he comes at it from a fan perspective and they let him do what he wants to do, unlike with, The Witcher, where, again, studio interference, changing things for no apparent reason. And like, apparently from what I read, the cast was like agitated with him because he was like, this isn't right. Like, this isn't how it is in the books or the games or anything. Like, why are you changing this? Why are you changing that? I'm like, yeah, no, I'm on his side. Quit changing crap. Like, leave it the way it was. There's a reason why everyone likes it. Why would you change it?
Yeah. If the wheel's not broke, why fix it? Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's what we keep telling people. If the wheel's not broke, why would you want to fix it? So keep that in mind. But Henry Cavill, you landed on your feet, and you're going to be just fine for the next 30 to 40 years of your career. You're going to be perfectly fine, and we wish you nothing but continued success, Henry Cavill, for sure. Once again, we are here with the incredible Dennis Robinson, who also just happens to be a fan of the Hulk. Here on this episode of And I Quote, don't forget to like and share this with everyone you know. If you have any questions for Dennis, whether you're joining this live on the replay, thank you so much for doing so, and let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. Be more than happy to hear from you. We've had some really good, interesting discussions as we've gone throughout the course of this episode. But I do want to ask you this. Are there any special memories for you from being at conventions or other events, whether you are there as a vendor or there as an attendee?
Well, I guess it depends on your definition of special memories, because there are definitely some interesting things that I've seen and experienced at conventions, like seeing people almost be thrown through tables. That was interesting.
Devon, get the table. Sorry, that's a Dudley Boys reference.
Oh, no worries, no worries. No, somebody was so. I mean, you've probably seen this at conventions. Like wrestlers are really good at cutting promos for shows.
I grew up watching wrestling, so
Yeah,
yeah,
same.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I was at a show.
Were you?
And the host was asking this wrestler to cut a promo.
Okay.
And the person behind them, who was shopping at the next door table, was talking very loudly. And so the guy who was cutting the promo was not super happy about it and was like talking loudly about, hey, I wish the guy behind me would shut up. And the guy behind him then comes around and like nudges into the camera, and he's like trying to do like an, oh yeah, brother kind of a thing. And they're starting to just go back and forth. And we all thought it was a bit until the wrestler picked this guy up and threw him into the tables. And his wife goes, oh my God, stop it. And then we all realized that, no, this is really happening. And so it got really awkward really fast. Guy cuts the promo after the guy's just sort of stunned, goes back behind his table, and then the guy gets up and he goes, hey man, I was just messing with you. He's like, yeah, I'm not somebody you mess with. And he's like all red and his veins are bulging and stuff, and we're all like, okay, real awkward for the rest of the day now. That one's probably one of the most memorable. And then I would say one of the conventions I went to, I mentioned before, being there with Christopher Priest, but I didn't know who Christopher Priest was. So he comes over, he's like, hey, my name's Christopher Priest, how are you? And I'm like, hey, my name's Dennis Robinson. How are you? He's like, you don't know who I am, do you? I said, nope, no idea. And he read me his entire resume, which is very long and very like crazy in terms of like all the important stuff that he's worked on. I was like, I feel like I should know who you are. But then as it turns out that he actually liked it better that I didn't know who he was. And so he and I just talked about everything, politics, life, writing style, like all kinds of different stuff for the 3 days of that convention, because that wasn't a very well-attended convention anyways. So we had plenty of time to chit chat. Those are two of the biggest ones that stick out in my mind in terms of like things I specifically take from conventions. I mean, and there were conventions where, they were super successful, or I got to meet individuals that I've only, talked through online. Pops Van Zant from the Comic Madness channel, I think it is. I might be butchering the name, but he's super great to indie creators, and he's constantly giving a voice to indie creators. And he just came up to me at a show after he and I had talked many times, but I wasn't expecting to see him, so I didn't realize that's who it was. And he's like, hey man, it's me. And I was like, and you are? And he's like, Pops. I was like, oh my God, Pops. Like it just wasn't clicking because I was in vendor mode. So, I tried doing the elevator pitch and all that stuff, and you sort of have to like turn it off and then go into like being a normal human. So I would say those are some of the more memorable kind of things that have happened to me at shows. I mean, there's a million things that happen, but as far as the most memorable, I would say those are it.
Oh, there you go. And yeah, I'm friends with Pops Van Zandt as well. He lets me post about my podcast every time on the Facebook group page, Comic Madness Network. Check them out. It's on Facebook. They're on YouTube. They got like a dozen shows on there.
Yeah.
With different programming for different creators or people who have questions or comments or concerns about the indie comics, how you can get your name out there, how you can market yourself. And there's a lot of good people on there. So feel free to check them out. They're on social media. We post on their Facebook group page all the time, so you may see us pop in there just to say, hey, we got a show coming up. What's up, guys? Tune in. But yeah, Dennis, it's funny you mentioned that. Man, all the streams are being crossed here because you and I know some of the same people, which is amazing. And it's great stuff. And we do appreciate everyone who has supported us in this venture. And we appreciate everyone who has supported Dennis in his venture. So with that being said, I want to let you know something, Dennis, very special here is that this episode and every episode of And I Quote is indeed powered by our good friends at Poddex. Now check this out. Poddex are the hottest, and I mean red hot, Dennis, red hot. New tool for podcasters looking to have more meaningful conversations or gamify their podcast. You simply shuffle up the cards, you ask a question, and you let the content roll. Get yours today at poddex.com. Use the promo code Ryan10. That's RYAN10. Ryan10 for 10% off your order. So with that being said, Dennis, Poddex wants to know, what was one thing you begged your parents for as a kid and they finally gave it to you?
Oh, what was, man?
You shoot your eye out, kid.
No, I didn't really care about that.
Okay.
Um,
Well, that's good.
I don't know, because most of the so if I asked for something and I didn't get it, I never did get it. And then other times if I asked for it, I would get it for like Christmas or something like that. I can't remember anything that I really desperately wanted that I did end up getting. I could tell you the things I desperately wanted and didn't get, but I can't really tell you, because I was pretty simple in terms of like what I play. Like I mostly played with Legos. Like I had a gigantic bin of Legos and I would just build stuff all day. And I'm also a huge Godzilla fan, and I still to this day have my like 18-inch plastic Godzilla toy that I got from KB Toys like way back in the day for like $5, and now if you try and find it, it's like $200. But I would like build stuff out of Legos for him to fight and have little Godzilla movies and stuff like that. So I was pretty simple in terms, of like what I did, with my time as a kid. Played with Gak, if you remember Gak at all.
Yeah, I remember. I was there. I remember.
Yeah, so I can't really think of anything
Okay.
that I asked for and then later got after many times of asking.
Okay, I gotta ask you
Sorry.
this now. I gotta ask you this now. Favorite Godzilla movie?
Might be -1.
The latest one that just came out.
Yeah,
recently.
it was really good.
It's got a lot of Oscar attention.
I literally got choked up at a Godzilla movie.
Did
Like,
you?
that doesn't ever happen, because usually Godzilla is the Japanese one anyways, is usually not terribly serious outside of the first one. The first one was more of a serious film because it was about like the horrors of nuclear war and stuff like that. After that, it got campy because, giant monsters in suits and all that jazz. And then the American ones, they're just big dumb action spectacles. But yeah, this one -1. Normally, you don't care about people in Godzilla movies, like it's just window dressing or just time filler. But you legitimately care about every human that's in -1. Like all the characters are well fleshed out, well developed. You really like these characters. You don't want to see anything happen to them, but it's a Godzilla movie, so it is what it is. And it's set in right at the end of World War II, so it's dealing with post-war Japan and like all the strife and hardship that those people went through. So no, it was just a really engaging story that also had a giant atomic fire-breathing lizard that would also wreak havoc. Yeah, I would probably say -1 was probably my favorite Godzilla movie.
Did you see the trailer for Godzilla and Kong: The New Kingdom?
I did, and again, the American Godzilla movies, they are what they are. It's fine. They're just big dumb action spectacles. I don't go there for a gripping story or anything like that. In fact, I hate the humans in just about every one of those movies, other than Bryan Cranston, who they killed off almost immediately in the first one.
First one, yeah.
But yeah, so I have seen it. I'll definitely go watch it. In fact, I believe the last one, Godzilla versus Kong, came out right around my birthday. So that's what I did for my birthday, was I went and watched that in the theater by myself. And I was like, I don't care. I'm watching me some, giant monsters punch each other for the next 2 hours. So I'll definitely see it. But I watched it and I was like, okay, we'll see what this is. It's another giant monkey. We'll see how it goes.
Godzilla. I can't help it. I got Godzilla on the brain now. Good stuff. Good stuff. Look forward to seeing what happens with Godzilla and Kong: The New Kingdom. And the trailer looks kind of intriguing to me, but at the same time, like the trailer was so hyped for Godzilla versus Kong, and then I saw the movie and I thought, boy, this trailer was way better than the actual movie. My gosh.
Yeah. I'm like, my only question is like, why is he like magenta now? Like, I mean, I'm sure they'll explain it.
He's wearing the brace around his arm, which I think has given him that kind of glow.
Oh, maybe, I don't know.
For
So I'm
King
like,
Kong's character. Anyway.
oh, okay. Because I'm like, I have no idea.
Yeah,
but
I
I'm
think
like, okay, sure.
He's got the Infinity Gauntlet on his arm now, so he's gonna turn magenta like Thanos.
Yeah, we'll see.
I don't know. Maybe it's Thanos and Galactus teaming up to save the world. With Godzilla and King Kong.
The other thing that's wonky about this, especially if you watch that trailer, like there's that one scene where Godzilla and Kong are running.
Yeah, they're running like towards something or away from something.
And like that works if it's like a 10-foot tall thing, but like 100-foot tall, it's very difficult for something that heavy to move that fast. So it just doesn't feel like it has the same sort of weight as it like Godzilla -1, that thing does not move fast. In the ocean, it swims kind of fast, but like on land, it walks really slowly. You'll notice, like in all the Toho movies, he moves really slowly because he doesn't have to move fast. You're screwed. It's more terrifying in the sense like it's coming. You can't do anything about it. It's going to be awful, and it's just like a slowly, encroaching danger. So yeah, so that is one of the things that sort of takes me out of the American ones is again big dumb action spectacle, and it's fine. Watching big giant monsters fight, I'll watch them. Just like Pacific Rim, it's fine. I'll watch them.
Pac Rim, that's right. And then they made a sequel, which turned out to be garbage.
Yeah, it was real bad.
It's what sometimes you work, sometimes you don't. But with that being said, Poddex wants to know if you could hire any wedding singer, who would you choose and what song would they play?
Any wedding, Weird Al Yankovic.
And what song?
Oh, I mean, just pick any. I mean, I just want Weird Al to sing at the wedding. I don't even care what he plays, to be honest. But
Okay.
Polka Face would be fun. That feels like a wedding song because it's just a mashup of other songs, and it's very like upbeat and catchy, which works for a wedding song. Because like some of the more famous or fun songs are a little too slow, like White and Nerdy or Amish Paradise. Those don't really work for a wedding song. But he's like fun, more polka-y songs, I think would do just fine. So I'm going to say Polka Face.
Okay. You can leave it at that. Very well said, sir.
I did see him live once at
did
BlizzCon, and it was fantastic. So he would definitely be an amazing time at a wedding.
Oh, wow. Wow, you got all kinds of interesting stories here. The things we discover at shows and Comic-Cons, to be honest. If you could bankrupt one person or company, who would it be?
Elon Musk.
Too much money. Yeah.
I'm so tired of him. I just want him to go away.
Yeah, he renamed the app that a lot of us use, which I think is ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. But it's always going to be called Twitter, so there you go.
Yeah, no one's ever going to call it X. Everybody literally just calls it Twitter.
No, it's all Twitter. It's always going to be Twitter. Blue birds, guys. Blue birds. Look it up.
Right.
It's online.
The blue bird of happiness.
The blue bird. That's right. The blue bird of happiness. I didn't know, but the blue bird. Yes, I'm familiar.
Well,
with
it's a quote from what was that movie? Yeah, it's got Jeff Bridges.
Oh, was it the Crazy Heart?
K-Pax.
Oh, K-Pax. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. I know. I've heard of it, never seen it. But
yeah, the asylum. They're always looking for the bluebird of happiness.
Well, that's just like your opinion, man. Anyway,
that's right.
What's the most annoying bill that you have to pay?
The most annoying bill
that you have to pay.
I would say I would say rent.
There you go.
Because to me, it feels like rent. It's a necessity because you need a place to live, but it just feels like you're lighting money on fire every month.
It is, isn't
like it's you get there's no value to it. You just constantly just throwing money away. It's like okay. So I would say rent is my most annoying bill because I would rather just own. I just can't do that at this point. Maybe, you know what? It depends on how well this Kickstarter goes. If the Kickstarter does really well, maybe then I can, stop renting, but we'll see.
There you go. Well, we hope the odds are ever in your favor. And I know how you feel. Rent, you and I are in the same boat. It could be a pain in the neck sometimes. I'll tell you what, or maybe all the time. But with that, which magazine would you like to be on the cover of one day?
Which magazine
would you like to be on the cover of? That is the question.
So these days I'm so out of the loop on magazines, but I would say just like a horror magazine. I can't think of one off the top of my head.
Maybe Fangoria, if that was still
Fangoria, or Nightmare magazine, I think is one that's still kind of like fairly big, and they have a podcast. I think that'd be cool to be on the cover of like a horror magazine. Not even necessarily just me on the cover, but like if you just put like a cover of my book or, my characters or something like that on the cover, I think that'd be pretty cool.
Fair enough. You spoke about this person earlier, but I'm just curious. How many times have you seen Lon Chaney Jr., the Wolfman?
So I've never actually seen the whole thing in one sitting. I've seen the whole movie, but I've never seen it from start to finish. It's always like something happens where I have to stop it and then come back later. But I would say I've seen the original Lon Chaney's Wolfman probably about 3 or 4 times.
Okay. Just want to make sure you got your Lycan, Wolf credit card over
Oh
there.
no, I had a
The
show.
Wolf man is like the OG, man.
I think it was Richmond GalaxyCon last year. I had a guy come up and he literally stood there for 45 minutes and asked me if I had seen each and every single piece of werewolf media. And every time I would say, nope, I haven't seen that. He's just like, well, how can you call yourself a werewolf specialist or a fan? Or I'm like, dude, there are a ton of werewolf movies. I threw one out with Jason Momoa. I was like, have you seen this one? He's like, no. I was like, well, then how can you call yourself a werewolf fan? Like, there's so many. There's not enough time to watch all of these.
I think I got about halfway through that movie you're talking about. I think it's just called Wolves.
Yes,
I think it's called Wolves with Jason Momoa. He plays like the leader of a pack who's like jealous of this new kid in town who's like getting all the attention.
Which was played by one of the X-Men from First Class.
Yeah, it was not Havoc, but
no, it was Havoc. This guy played
no,
Havoc. Havoc's the guy with the chest
it was.
laser,
You're
right?
You're right. I forget his name though. I apologize.
Yeah, I can't remember.
But I remember seeing halfway through that movie and I'm thinking, oh, this movie's a bit intriguing, even though it's got Momoa trying to like kill the kid in the background. But I still want to see the rest of it. I got to go back and see if it's still available. But
that one is wonky to me. Well, so it's actually directed by David Hayter. Do you recognize that name? It's the voice of Solid Snake from the Metal Gear Solid series.
Never played it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so he's like a fairly famous voice actor. And so he was the director of that. He was also in the MacGyver, or not the MacGyver, Guyver movie. He was in the Guyver movie back in the 80s.
No kidding.
He was the Guyver 2, I believe.
Wow.
But yeah, so yeah, the one thing I don't like about that movie, and it is pretty ridiculous, is when they change into werewolves, they keep their hairstyle. So like they still have the same hairstyle, but it's on top of a werewolf body. It's just weird.
It's a bit wonky, isn't it?
It's a bit wonky, and there is like a sex scene in that movie that's real weird because it's sort of like in between, like they're doing transforming and stuff, and it goes on for a long time in the uncut version. Yeah, it's kind of weird. It comes out of nowhere.
Okay.
But not my favorite werewolf movie, to put it that way.
It's okay. It's the things we hear and see in these things.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I do want to take this opportunity to say thank you for Dennis Robinson for being our guest on this episode of And I Quote, despite some little bit of technical difficulties in the background.
Nice.
But Dennis, my man, thank you so much for being here, kind sir. Appreciate you being here. If someone is watching or listening to this and they want to know more about you and the story known as Lycan, Solomon's Odyssey, where can they follow you on social media?
Well, first off, Ryan, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been great talking to you. You can find me in a couple different places. So I have a podcast myself. It's called Botched, a D&D podcast. It's an improv comedy show draped in the loose skin of Dungeons & Dragons with a little bit of drinking involved. The current season is set in the SCP universe. And if you don't know what that is, think X-Files on steroids. We actually have an employee orientation video, which is really fun over on our YouTube. You can just find that Botched podcast. You can check us out on all your podcatchers or, YouTube, Twitch, stuff like that. Just Botched podcast. And but as far as the Lycan series goes, you can go to my website, hiveheadstudios.com, and check out the books that way. I actually have the first 18 pages of the first book up there for free if you want to check them out digitally. Or right now, we're doing a Kickstarter for the third book in the series. And that is the easiest way to find that is www.lycanbook.com, LYCANBOOK.com. And that runs for the entire month of March. And yeah, so right now we're about a quarter of the way funded, and we just launched 4 hours ago. So it's been going really, really well so far. And yeah, so get on in there and check that out.
Fabulous stuff, my friend. Well, thank you again for being here. Do greatly appreciate it. We wish you continued success in the universe of Lycans and werewolves and all those creepy crawly and those thingamabobs that go bump in the night. My name is Ryan of And I Quote Channel. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. That's what I said. Twitter and Instagram at RyanRPM5. I know, Dennis. At RyanRPM5. Also, check out all the incredible links in the description below to find out more about Dennis Robinson and the great things that he and his creative team are doing over there for Lycan, Solomon's Odyssey, and all the things we got going on. We are this close to hitting 1,000 subscribers. Once we do, we're going to throw a great big live stream that's going to include returning guests. Dennis Robinson is more than welcome to come back and talk more about werewolves or his lack of werewolf knowledge, and all kinds of great things. Maybe we can geek out over some of our favorite Marvel characters. I don't know. Because I like Marvel, right? Dennis, you and I like Marvel. We can have fun with that. We're also going to have returning favorites. We're going to have special guests. We're going to have special giveaways that you, our incredible fans/subscribers, could be eligible to win, such as 11x17 prints done by the art of John Pinto. If you're a fan of Star Wars, look at this bad boy. You could be walking home with this. This could be yours. You hang this up on your wall, put it in your office space, put it in your classroom, whatever it is. If you're a fan of Doctor Who, we got a Doctor Who print over here. Any Whovians in the building? Any Whovians? Yeah, I think Dennis is one. He's waving at me from backstage in the green room. By the way, free coffee and donuts there, buddy. And outside of that, we also have Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which has been blowing up the interwebs for the last few years. If you're a fan of that property, you could be eligible to win this 11x17 print done by the art of John Pinto on Facebook. So make sure you're following him and all the incredible things that he's doing. If you want to support the show, we have a Buy Me a Coffee link in the description. You can see it scrolling across the bottom of your screen right now. So check us out. And we thank you all for your support. Thank you to our supporters who have contributed to the show. Thank you all so much. We cannot do it without you. Also, we got merch. We got shirts. We got hoodies. We got stickers. We got coffee mugs. We have long sleeve shirts. We have all kinds of clothing, all kinds of pieces of swag that you can add to your car or to your notebooks, or maybe something to the back of your comic book, once you're done reading Lycan, issue number 1 through 4, something like that. Going off the rails here. But those are some of the things we got going on. So check all the links out in the description below. Also, the links are located in our bio, where you can find out more information about our shows, the stuff that we're doing, and help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. And I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to each and every single one of you who have liked, who have commented, who have shared our videos, who have subscribed to the channel, all that stuff. We cannot do this without you. We are so thankful. We are grateful for everyone and you who have supported us in this journey. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, ring that bell to be notified when new videos go up or they go live. And remember, life is better when supporting indie creators. Take a look.
Famous Faces and Funnies in Melbourne, Florida is leading the way in pop culture fun. From comic books and graphic novels to Funko Pops and collector's items, Famous Faces and Funnies has it all. Rick Shea and the professional team at Famous Faces and Funnies are friendly and knowledgeable. Whether you're looking for toys, props, collector treasures, or a new comic book, Famous Faces and Funnies is your one-stop shop. To find Famous Faces and Funnies on Facebook and Twitter, just type at FFF Comics.
You've worked hard and written a great book. Now, it's time to give it a great cover. If you're an indie author or small press publisher, Plasmafire Graphics is your source for affordable cover illustration and graphic design. Plasmafire Graphics, when the look of your book matters to you.
Good morning! Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.